Welcome to Veterans Council and Veterans Facebook page and our podcast today. Our podcast, we're kind of continuing the theme. Our theme for this whole week is going to be on the military and veterans families. And we had a nice episode on the military veterans families on Monday. And we want to continue that theme with today on our special podcast, which is for military and veteran families who have special needs children. I want to first of all introduce our guests, and I want to first introduce my co-host. My co-host here is going to be Jean. How you doing, Jean?
Hi, Tony. Hi, everybody. Thanks for having me again.
Yeah, well, that's great having you. And I want to first introduce our guests real quick, and then Jean and I are going to kind of talk about what the takeaways from Monday's podcast. So, to no further ado, and I'm really excited about the guests today because all of them are not only military veterans, but they also have children who have special needs. So, I have Marla Batista. How you doing, Marla? You guys should remember Marla. You guys should remember Marla because Marla was on our Monday's podcast, and I learned right through that podcast that she had a son who had special needs. So I said, I invited her, and she said, "Yeah, I could show up." So thank you, Marla, for being accessible.
Thank you.
I also got Dr. Eric Williams, which is my last name too, but there's no relationship. Eric is also Army veteran, a licensed marriage and family therapist. And he also has a couple of children who have autism, and he's our credential guy for the day. And Maureen Elias, she's also a Army veteran as well as a spouse of a military active duty. And then she also has 3 children of autism, Maureen. Yeah. So we have a lot. And of course, I've got my co-host Jean. And Jean and I, we're going to kind of have a quick 5 minutes talking about the episode on Monday before we start getting into our panel today. So, Jean, how's it going? So, what do you think? I'm not kind of setting you up because we didn't talk about this, but one of the takeaways I had from Monday's podcast with all the families there was resiliency. Did you have any kind of special takeaway from Monday's podcast?
I love the support. I love the support that everybody had. And some of the comments we got on Facebook and things like that afterwards, I think a lot of parents, families came out and said, that validation for how we feel we're not alone. That really went well. And I think that's what a lot of people really need is validation. It's going to be okay. You're not the only one. You're normal for feeling the way you're feeling.
Yes, and I kind of have the same thing. Is that you almost normalize some things you thought you suffer from it, and we'll see the same thing for today's topic as well. Now, Jean, in your time in the Air Force, have you ever come across the special need program the Air Force has?
No. In my time in the Air Force, I remember helping out the local community in different spots when I was stationed at Nellis in Las Vegas, for example. They had the Special Olympics, did some ice skating adventures and things like that, but it was usually civilian community support. And now that we're doing these podcasts, I had to think really hard, no, I don't remember. And I had some friends who had some special needs children, but I personally don't remember much in the way of actual military support, unfortunately.
And it's interesting because when I part of my experience being enlisted, I became an officer and being a company commander, I had to know the special need couples in my company because they had special needs, and sometimes with the it's a special somebody help me out. What's that special needs program they have for the military, the EFMP. So and so I learned about that, and I still didn't know much about it and about what it really meant to have a child that had special needs, not just for psychological, but also physical needs too. And I was reading somewhere about there's over 139,000 military children that are part of that special need program, the Exceptional Family Members program. And normally in the military, it's if you want to get some kind of special needs, you got to go to the Military One Source, and we'll talk to our panel about what kind of assistance they've seen in the military. Our panel is very, very diverse. We have people who are on active duty, and so they got, when you're active duty, you have a lot more resources than when you get out. And then we want to hear about some of the lack of resources you may have when you do get out and you're just a veteran trying to navigate that. So that's what we want to try to take away there. And also, if you're watching this on Facebook, our call to action is that please share this Facebook Live, and then when you share it, make sure they like it, because when you like it, then it'll increase people who like what we're doing, but then it'll give us more a coverage on who's doing that. So definitely, if you like this podcast, share it and then like it up. So much further ado, let me introduce the panel. And what I want to do first, before we dive into the meat of it, just give us a quick overview of who you are in the panel, so our audience know kind of who we're talking to. So we'll start off with Eric Williams, my non-relative brother. And Eric, introduce yourself to the room.
Oh, absolutely. First of all, thank you all for having me on. I, excuse me, I always enjoy being able to talk about autism. So briefly put, I'm an Army veteran. I served 2001 to 2006, and I got out state in the Fayetteville, North Carolina area. So I'm very much still connected to the military community. I still work with military families. And my experience with autism really comes from having twin boys that are 12 years old, Carter and Caden. And so just being in the trenches with them, learning as I go. And what we'll probably hear later on is I don't have the experience of working in the military system because I had my children once I had gotten out. So my experience is primarily with the resources on the outside of the military. So very happy to be here, very happy to be able to share my story, but also contribute to the much needed dialogue about special needs families and the military community.
Thanks, I appreciate it. And thank you for having me on here. You know, the reason one reason why we did a special podcast on a Thursday in the morning, right? And I'm a retired guy, so I don't like morning stuff. You know, I like to do it in the evening. But I really wanted Eric to be on here because I knew Eric. I knew he had a lot of experience, and so I said, whenever you're available, Eric, I'm going to make it happen. I said, I hope it's Monday night. Oh no, okay, do Monday night. That's why we're here on a Thursday, 11 o'clock. Blame Eric. So
yes.
And that's one of our guests, and we've known each other, Maureen and I. Maureen, look, we've been in contact for at least a couple of years now. But Maureen, tell us, give us a little bit of who you are.
Sure. So I am a U.S. Army veteran. I actually served the same years as Eric, from 2001 to 2006 as a counterintelligence agent. When some injuries that I sustained degraded to the point where I had to medically discharge. It also happened, though, at the time that my husband, who was also active duty, and I noticed something wasn't quite right with their kids. To be honest, we kind of thought they were brats, and that was because we were both in the Army, but it turned out that they both had autism. And we went on to have another child who also was diagnosed with autism. So I have one boy and two girls on the spectrum. And I spent about 12 years as a stay-at-home mom, just immersing myself in the world of autism and taking care of them. And we're really lucky because our kids are thriving. They're doing really well. But being a military spouse has definitely presented some challenges when it comes to raising kids on the spectrum. And I'm sure Marla will share as well, you know, moving all the time and the inconsistency between schools has really forced me to become an advocate as a parent. And then that advocacy work led into the work that I do now as a veteran advocate in Washington, D.C.
Thank you very much, Maureen, and I appreciate that. And to no further ado, I know it's, you know, we've had Marla here before. Is Marla here again? Marla, please introduce yourself again to the group.
Hey everyone, well, I'm Marla, Marla Bautista. I am not a military veteran. I am a military spouse, and I do have 3 children. One who is on the autism spectrum. He is 10 years old, my son Junior, and we have a lot of experience within active duty military life, transitioning our son from different states and countries, and trying to just obtain services that are efficient and work effectively for him. So it's been a pretty wild ride, but definitely loving the opportunity to be here and talk to everyone and get to know everyone's different experiences and what we have to look forward to after getting out, and what people can do now while they're in still, and, you know, getting the services that they need.
Thanks, Marla. I appreciate that, and great having here. So what I want to first do, I want Eric to talk first, and Eric talked first for a couple of reasons. First of all, he's credentialed, so this is his field. So I want him to kind of give us a brief overview on special needs. You know, not enough that we get CEU or we go to sleep. Just give us a brief overview what's going on, and then we can start talking about your experiences, and then we'll go around the horn. So Eric, the floor is yours.
Absolutely. So for a lot of people, and this is a discussion we've had among a lot of people, where the question is, well, what really is autism? and Hollywood will portray it a certain way, and you may know somebody who knows somebody who will describe an experience. But the one thing that I want everybody to kind of take away from, the first thing is primarily that once you see or know a child or an adult with autism, you really only know that one child. It is not the same for each person. It's a spectrum disorder for that, and that's what they mean by it's a spectrum disorder, where these individuals can fall anywhere on that spectrum. The other thing, though, is, and this is something that I've just kind of learned over the years, is that when you look at a family member or any person that has that diagnosis, that same adage about one person that has that, if you see one person with the diagnosis of autism, you just see one person. It also applies to the family. Now you have one family. That family experience is very different too. So each family that you may come into contact with, you say, hey, you know what? They have a child with autism. It does not mean that that family is just like the other family too. So, and that's one of the things that I think we'll hear today as we kind of go around the horn and share our experiences, that our experiences may have some similarities, but they're very, very different. They're different ingredients that make up what we do and how we, take care of our children, our loved ones. So, and simply put, autism is a developmental disability that it's not so much a mental health condition that you can just take medication and you'll be better. It's more of a developmental disability that they are born with. And a lot of the research just supports the idea that it's primarily genetic. And so you will hear a lot of people talk about a cure and things of that nature. That's not what this show is about, but the main takeaway is, once a person has that diagnosis, more often than not, that diagnosis does not go away. And so some of the symptoms could be these individuals may have very, very limited social skills. They may not be able to take care of themselves in the community on their own. So they will primarily need some form of assistance, whether it be very minimal or a lot. And in some cases, they may have other diagnoses that come with those too. So some of the common ones that I've seen are seizure disorder, sleep disorders, maybe even some eating disorders that go with those too. So, and so the reason I talk about it in such general terms is primarily because I can't tell you what every person's diagnosis is going to look like. But what I can tell you is those are some of the commonalities among the individuals that do have the diagnosis. And so I'm very open to questions as we go along, but as we kind of get into this, you'll really begin to hear and see that the narratives are very, very similar in some aspects, but also very, very different.
Great rundown. And Gene, you have anything to add before we?
No, Eric, great explanation. I really can't top that. You hit the points very well. It is a developmental issue. It's not something that's curable, at this time. I mean, until we learn how to grow the brain in different ways, we can't grow fingers yet. So we're a long way from that. Just wanted to shout out to everybody, call to action, like share this on your Facebook, like us, please like the page. That's how you'll get notifications every time we go live.
Thanks, Jane. So Eric, let's switch hats now. You went from being a counselor, now you're the father.
Yes.
How is it, the father?
All right, so I like this hat better because it's like I'm an expert, and it's the biggest thing I always tell people is you may not be an expert on autism, but you're an expert on your family member with autism. And that's the one that's the one role that you have to really own and take charge of. So I am an expert on Carter and Caden. This is what I do every day, 24/7, 365. So my experience, just to give you a very, very snippet of it, my children, identical twins. However, again, that adage, you see one kid with autism, you just see that one kid. They're very different in how their autism present. Now, they both may have the same diagnosis. They have, we live in the same household, the environment is very much the same, but how it affects both of them are very different. So one of my children, Caden, is more so the one that likes to just be in motion. He likes to drive around. And so that's one of the things that we often find ourselves is riding around. I feel like I'm almost like a tour guide for the city of Fayetteville because I'm constantly riding and yep, there's that again. We take the same route every time because we just have to, whereas Carter's more the homebody. He prefers to stay in. He wants to look at the cell phone. And so so our experience, I will definitely say, just to kind of bring it back to from a family perspective, is it can be very, very challenging in the beginning. Once you get the diagnosis, you don't know what you're doing. Where does this come from? Did I pass it on to my son? Did it come from my wife? Is she gonna blame me because it could have been me? Like, you know, and so for me, being a veteran, I thought about every shot that I've ever gotten in the military, the smallpox, yellow fever, anthrax, everything. I was like, man, so was that it? You know, was it either one of those? And so you begin to question quite a bit about what you brought to it. How did you do it? And there's that period of blaming yourself. So that's been a lot of my experience with it. And then just kind of learning that, you know what, I just have to forget about what could have contributed to it and just say, hey, you know what, this is what I have to do as a parent, as a dad. I have to educate myself. I have to become involved. And so I've done that. I've become very involved in Autism Society here in this city. I'm on the board of directors for the Autism Society. I'm also on the board of directors for the school that my kids attend, which is in Cary. It's Mariposa School for Children with Autism. So I'm on the board of directors for them. I participate in, you know, some of the decisions they make as far as how we're going to run the program. So I'm very much involved in these because I felt that as a parent, if I'm going through this, then I must also be obligated, you know, by my sense of purpose to help other people too. So that's been my experience. That's kind of how I address and look at autism, and it's my duty every day, every chance I get to talk. When Tony said, hey, I want you to be on the show, I was like, yes, I'll do that because that's my calling. I am supposed to talk about this experience to really help others really connect to this and know that they're not alone, but also to know that there are people out here who can also assist them and walk, you know, hand in hand with them.
Thank you. And Maureen, can you identify what Eric is talking about, or your experiences as a spouse of active duty?
Sure, yeah. So I think, you know, my kids are a little older. I have a 16 and 17-year-old that are on the spectrum, and then a 9-year-old. And just like Eric spoke about, you know, when my first two got their diagnosis, I was devastated, and I racked my brain for what I had done. You know, I think I didn't have all the shots that Eric did, but I had all the military shots. But I had wondered if perhaps it was my husband and my working such a high op tempo since 9/11 and the kids always being at daycare, like maybe I didn't love them enough or I didn't socialize them enough. And then, you know, I had to let that go and move on with the diagnosis. And when my kids were little, it wasn't a household word. It was a lot of educating the public and advocating. And, you know, everyone thought my kids were brats and you just need to spank them, you're a bad mom. I can't tell you how many strangers felt like that was appropriate to tell me in a grocery store as I was trying to deal with these two kids that were screaming and throwing up because the sights and the smells were too much for them. And then I had my third, and when I had my third, I was a stay-at-home mom. I got massages 3 times a week. Like, it was a very different experience, and yet she also received her diagnosis. And so I think at that point was when I finally realized, like, that self-blame was not the right answer. And so I was very heavily involved with the Autism Society of North Carolina, and I actually credit it with really helping me thrive as a parent, because I finally met with this tiny group of other parents on the spectrum, and just being able to tell someone what you're going through and how hard it is just took this concrete barrier off of my chest and allowed me to start living again and make friends who understood, you know, when my daughter screamed because she couldn't take her dress off without taking the wings off, you know, for 3 hours, they got it. They didn't make fun of me or judge me. They were like, girl, I hear you. You're not alone. Let me, you know, call me when you can't do this anymore. So huge fan of the Autism Society of North Carolina. We lived there for 8 years. And then I think, you know, as a military spouse, the military's come a long way in what they're trying to do and provide for military kids. But what I will say is, unfortunately, just like you find with the school systems, it's inconsistent. And so we actually only enrolled one of our children in the EFMP program, which is the Exceptional Family Member Program, a program that the military has for children with special needs, because it was so frustrating to use that we didn't even want to bother when it came to our other 2 children. And honestly, we tend to use, like Eric, we use outside military resources much more than we use military resources, because there's a lot more flexibility, there's a lot more availability. Usually the services on post, the wait lists are so long that by the time we've made it to the top of the wait list, it's time to PCS. So it's been a, you know, it's been a journey.
Thanks, Mari, and I appreciate it. I want to now find out Marla. Marla's kind of new here to me too, McDill and Tampa and stuff like that. So, Marla, what's your experience now being a mother of a special needs child?
So for my family, my son was diagnosed at 2 years old when we were overseas living in Germany. He was diagnosed by a developmental pediatrician there at Landstuhl. And when he was diagnosed, we kind of jumped on top of services. We would do early intervention. We got respite care. We had, therapy, and everything seemed great. When I initially noticed there was an issue with him, I breastfed him until he was 1.5. So of course we did that whole, what did I do? I thought I was doing everything right. I read books to him. I breastfed him, solely. I didn't give him any formula, all these different things that we read about. We kind of take that in and, internalize that and say, well, we pick it apart. What did we do or what didn't we do? And so I noticed when he was younger, he loved the pureed baby food, sweet potatoes, but anytime I gave him meat, he would regurgitate it. And he would do that constantly. And any meat product I ever tried to give him, he would do that. And so I was like, hey, he doesn't like meat. But then over time, as he got older, he would only eat the baby food Cheetos. They were like little soft, dissolvable Cheetos. He would eat those. So I started giving him those. And then we tried barbecue chips. And so I started giving him those. So my son ate literally pureed sweet potato baby food only and chips. And any one of my friends in Germany can attest to this. My little baby was eating chips, and that's all he would eat. That was a solid food. But since it was a solid food, I gave that to him because he wouldn't eat anything else. And so up until he was 2, that's all he would eat. And so we noticed there was an issue. He started saying words like mama, dada, all that stuff was normal around 9 months, 10 months, but then I realized that's all he was saying. He didn't progress verbally. He didn't say new words. And so when we got to that 16-month checkup, you're going through that evaluation and it's like, does he do this? When did he start crawling? When did he start walking? When did he start using these words? When did he start going to the potty? And I realized, I started checking no on more of the answers of the things he was doing. And that's when I brought it up to the doctor, like, is there an issue? And then we started going through testing. And after 2 days of testing at Landstuhl, they diagnosed him with sensory processing disorder and autism spectrum disorder. And so the sensory issue was with the textures in the food. And that was something that I noticed at a really young age with him. And still to this day, he's a bustling 10-year-old boy that literally has a food palette of probably 10 foods. And it's been really difficult. We did feeding therapy. And so feeding therapy was super fun because when we would go to feeding therapy, he would eat, it would be like raw bell peppers with hummus and green peas and Vienna sausages. And so I would go to the grocery store and I would buy all of those things and I would get home and he would throw them up. And I'm like, are you kidding me? So it's just like a trial and error. And like Eric said, no 2 children are the same. And even your own child who started, one way, 2 weeks later, he could eat this one food straight 2 weeks. And then all of a sudden he will never eat that food again. Or that shirt with the tag in it. He was fine with the Minecraft shirt. Now all of a sudden he hates the Minecraft shirt. And so those things evolve and they change. And we have to, as parents, we have to evolve with them. And the things are unique. The things that we face are unique. Like Eric said, those drives, you have to take that route. There's no other way. You can try it, but you won't like the result. So that's been my experience. It's just all trial and error for my family. And it is difficult having 2 other children who aren't on the spectrum and trying to, incorporate everyone and be that mom to everyone in the way that they need.
Thanks, Marla.
Excellent points, Marla. Thank you, everybody, for sharing that. I just want to throw out here, we're dealing with COVID-19 right now. Some states are starting to release restrictions. Here in Florida, we're at the 25% phase one, introduced, encouraged by the federal government and all of that. So I just want to throw out there and ask the question, how is COVID-19 affecting you guys as parents with special needs? How is it affecting your family?
Yeah, I don't mind jumping in on that one because I've had enormous amount of quote unquote fun with this. And I say that jokingly because I have had a shattered bedroom window and cell phone screen that has been cracked and then repaired and then cracked again. Just because the structure is different. And so once the COVID-19, as you mentioned, occurred, for the longest time, because their school is more of a treatment facility, they just get ABA therapy there, and there's an educational component that's cooked into it as well. So we were like, okay, K through 12 closed, got it. How long can this school stay open? And it was like, oh, please just stay open a little bit longer. And so once they made the decision to close, it was like, all right, so here we are. And for that schedule to be so off, it was a lot for them. And my wife and I would just look at each other because I still, I'm a counselor and I still have to go to work and I'm just doing telehealth. And so I felt bad leaving, knowing that she had all three kids. I actually had three kids. I have a 3-year-old daughter and I have the two kids, the two boys with the autism spectrum disorder, whom also have sensory processing disorder, whom also have ADHD, whom also do not sleep well at night. So that combination, and so we're not sleeping well at night, we're getting up. We would usually get that break where they might go to school, but we're not getting that break anymore. So now we're just two tired people up all day trying to manage them reacting to the fact that their schedule is off. So it has been a challenge. And so the stay at home has, for us, I would love to say, yeah, we sat at home the entire time. I would love to say I did my complete part and didn't go anywhere. But the reality is I had to modify that. We didn't go in stores, but we didn't stay in the house either. We had to take those drives and just drive around. And my stop might have been at the gas station to get more gas. And I might have come to my therapy office to use the restroom, but we were going to ride because we had to. Otherwise, I'd have had another broken window and more broken phones. And so we just had to manage it that way. So the sleep schedules have been very much off. The behaviors we've seen, what's the word I'm looking for? They kind of regressed. That's it. They regressed in some of the progress they made because the schedule is so often. So now there's a lot more stimming behaviors. And we try and do it as much as we can. But again, one parent, 3 kids, I really felt bad, having to leave my wife in that capacity. But we just did the best we could. And so, I think the idea was, hey, you know what, we're doing everything we can to educate. Now it's kind of more like, hey, we're just trying to, make it. We just want to survive the pandemic. So there's no more education necessarily as much as it is, hey, can we just get some form of a structure or routine down pat until this thing lifts? So that's just been our experience. But I'm very interested to hear what everybody else's has been like too.
So, for us, it's been interesting. Kids on the spectrum, adults on the spectrum thrive on routine. And COVID has absolutely not just destroyed the routine now, but we can't even tell them it's going to come back because we don't know what's happening in the future. And so for these individuals who really need to know what's coming and what's going on, as parents, gosh, I feel so helpless because I'm unable to provide them that assurity or that promise that it's coming. But, like Eric said, schooling has definitely been interesting. The teenagers are actually doing okay with the online education. Luckily, they're much more tech savvy than I was at their age. But the hard thing for them is being a military family, we're moving. And they don't even get to say goodbye to their friends in person. My daughter had her 16th birthday, which for a young woman is this epic event. And all we could do was drive by in the car and wave at her friends through the window. And how heartbreaking that was for me as a parent, because I would love for that to be this special moment. And then for our 9-year-old, she has a learning disorder on top of having autism. And she goes to a special school as well, where it's 6 kids, 3 teachers. And, you know, my husband is still in the Army and I'm working from home, and we're trying to do our jobs, and neither of us have jobs where there's a lot of downtime. And so trying to get her to focus and pay attention to her online classwork is so hard for her. And I can feel that frustration bubbling up in her, and she's still learning those emotion words to tell us that she's frustrated. So then she spends, you know, a couple of hours just so frustrated because she was trying really hard for school and now she's all worn out. And a lot of it is just diving deeper and deeper into empathy and understanding and compassion. But like Eric, we're dealing with exhaustion. None of our children sleep well. They never have. And so, you know, it almost feels like I can feel that candle just burning from both ends and the middle. And I'm not sure where I'm supposed to pull this energy from as a parent, but they, you know, my older two also need assurance. Like, just because they're special needs does not mean they don't know what's going on. You know, I broke into tears the other night when my daughter drew. So we have chalk markers so they can draw on the windows. That's their art canvas right now. And my 9-year-old drew the COVID virus on the window. And it broke my heart that at 9 years old, this is something she should have to worry about. And, you know, for my teenagers, it's, am I going to be able to apply for college? What is college going to look like, especially being on the spectrum? What kind of services are they going to have for me? Because I know we talked last night, and Eric and Marla both have said they're not getting a whole lot of support as far as, you know, special services go from their school, and we sure aren't either. You know, what is this supposed to look like in the future? And sadly, we don't have those answers yet. So there's a lot of just, you know, maintaining normalcy or just maintaining not chaos, you know, and that has to be okay right now, and a lot of self-forgiveness. You know, I don't want to see someone's spice rack that's all clean. I'm just trying to survive.
Let me just add real quick too. And then when Starbucks closed, because I'm like, coffee is pretty much how I'm running right now. It was like, oh, Starbucks is closed for a while. Like, wait, what? Why are we closing coffee shops right now? And this is all we have left, right, and to keep us going. So I want to jump in on that too, because I was like, yeah, it really got bad for a while.
Yeah, it's been difficult for us being new transplants to Florida. We were just starting to kind of get those services going. We were going through our evaluation periods for ABA, speech, and OT when all of this happened. We moved here in November and we got them in school, but the school isn't near our home, and transferring services was pretty difficult because every state does something different. So here in Florida, they do not have self-contained classrooms at every school. So therefore, I had one child going to school on post and another child going to school off post and another child at a daycare facility somewhere else. So it was pretty difficult for us. And then with the switch to, you know, the self-isolation and, you know, staying home from the pandemic, it has just been, I'm not going to lie, it's been a mess. Trying to keep my daughter, who's in 2nd grade, on track for school. She's got Zoom calls with her teacher. My son has Zoom calls. And for me, I have to be present, physically holding the device or keeping the laptop open for my son to have a Zoom call. Because if not, he will press leave meeting and he will be done and he will move on with his life. So it's just been really difficult to keep him on track. And honestly, we were talking about, you know, their emotional well-being. And for me, I've at this point put that over their academic achievement because it's been hard. I mean, crying 24 hours a day. My son, again, doesn't sleep, has ADHD. He's on Trileptal and Abilify and all these different medications to keep him up and down and, you know, mood stabilizers, and then trying to put him to sleep at night and wake him up at a certain time has just been so hard for us. And then we tried to go to Costco the other day. And so we'll throw in that sensory processing disorder. And as the attendants are forcing me to put a mask on my son and how that doesn't work, there might be a YouTube video on it. I don't know. But let's just say there was a lot of screaming. There was a lot of crying. There was a lot of, I hate my family. And of course the mask didn't go on and we had to leave the store.
Yeah, I think it's important to mention right here that the CDC has put out guidelines when it comes to mask wearing, and I really wish that businesses would be required to post this so there's an understanding that there are individuals, kids under 2 don't need to wear a mask, or they're saying they don't have to, but there are also other individuals who are unable to wear a mask, whether they don't have the capability of putting the mask on and taking it off, or they can't physically wear the mask because they have a breathing disorder or they have a sensory disorder and they can't wear it. And so one thing I would urge to anyone who's watching this is please educate everyone in your community that not everyone can wear masks. And I had to check myself because I went to the grocery store the other day and there were a couple people not wearing masks. And at first I was like, what the heck? This is how we protect each other. And then I had to remember, not everyone is capable of wearing that mask. And we need to, understand that and be kind and patient in understanding that some can't. But for those that can, we should wear our masks because we help protect those who are unable to wear their masks.
Listen to you guys, I'm exhausted. Okay. I don't know how you guys do this. So what I would like to do, and there's even more harder if you're a spouse or back home when your husband or wife is deployed somewhere and you're kind of looking for that time when they come home to get that relief, and then you find that you're not. So can you give us some ideas of how do you do your self-care? What is your self-care of making sure that you don't go bonkers?
I think Eric explained it. The Starbucks, the drive-through, the ones that don't have drive-throughs are closed.
Right.
So that's out. Alone time, that's also out. Sanity, reading a book quietly.
Yeah. I know so we've had to, my wife, for the longest time, she worked in corporate America. She was a pharmaceutical rep. So she had to travel a lot and go out of town. And so there've been plenty of situations where it was just the twins and I, and the idea of having a schedule is huge. Like, I didn't care if they didn't go to sleep. We was gonna have nap time or quiet time because it wasn't even for them. It was more so for me, just to all right, you know what? I just need a minute to figure out how do I get through the next phase, because for me, I would have to break my days down as in, okay, breakfast is at this time, then they have this appointment at this time, and then we can make it to lunch. And then lunchtime, that's a little bit chill because I can at least know what I'm doing, and then go play for a minute while I clean up. And then we're going to go down. But then I need to figure out, once they go down, how do I kind of get myself back together? Because they're going to get up at a certain time, let's say 3 o'clock, then that's snack time. And so for me, every day I had to figure that out. Now, as far as the self-care in that, it really was, I didn't really drink coffee a whole lot until more recently. And I'm not saying it gets worse as they get older, but I just realized I need more to keep me going. So I might drink coffee in the morning, and then I have another one towards the end of the day, where it's just like, all right, I got to go back home. I got to be ready. And so what I've tried to do in the interim is try to teach them how to also do exercise. And so I was like, hey, let's go to, Raven Rock State Park and let's walk around, or let's go to Cape Fear River Trail and let's go walk the trail. So I'm getting some form of an exercise in, but also teaching them, like, look, you got to kind of, well, at least getting them engaged with me too. So it's not always the easiest. It's not, definitely now with the pandemic, it's like none of that is happening. We went one day to the river trail, and I promise you, I had to make them walk the mile that we did because they were antagonizing each other. They didn't want to do it. And I was like, look, we're going to do this mile anyway. So we were half a mile out, half a mile back, but it's hard. And so the self-care really does come in the form of, if everybody goes to bed at 8 o'clock or 8-ish, then I get a moment where I'm probably, and it sounds bad to say this, but sometimes self-care is just looking at, I don't know, Facebook or Instagram, mindlessly scrolling, like, oh yeah, just kind of see what this is. So I don't have to think about anything. So that's really sometimes all there is to self-care. Or my wife and I figured out a way to, sometimes I may be able to go away and I'll go visit my brothers down in Georgia. And so, but that may be for a weekend, but I also know that prior to me going, then I got to put in a whole lot of work, and vice versa. Or if she wants to go away, then I know that I have to kind of take them on. And so we might have a break once a year where we may just have no kid at all, and one of us just goes off with family. And then as far as us taking a vacation together or having a date night, that's a whole nother topic we'll probably get to, but that's kind of my idea of self-care. It's not pretty, it's not glamorous. I love trying to go to the gym, If I can get to a gym and I'm not tired from the fact that I didn't sleep well the night prior, then I can try to go. The problem though is I might have slept 3 or 4 hours, and on a good night I get 5 hours. So then trying to go to a gym is like, well, is it even worth it? So I'd rather just not even have a gym membership at this point. It's like, look, you know what? I'll probably exercise whenever I get them to go, but other than that, there's not a whole lot of exercise that I can really consistently do because our schedule, especially at this point, is so thrown off.
I think, so before COVID, self-care was kind of like Eric talked about. It's challenging to find the time, but with COVID, honestly, self-care is a lot of self-forgiveness. It's letting those dishes sit in the sink. It's letting the house be a disaster. It's not washing the laundry unless I have no underwear that, I'm down to the granny panties. So, and sometimes it's like Eric talks about, it's sitting in the kitchen by myself, staring into space after everyone has finally gone to sleep. But you have to make that judgment call between, am I going to get rest or am I going to spend a little bit of time by myself? And those are two very difficult things to choose from. So I think, for parents out there that are struggling, the best thing I would suggest is be so kind to yourself. You need to give yourself that love, and you need to give yourself a lot of forgiveness because no one's judging you. And if they are, that's their problem, not yours.
Anything else? You got any questions from the Facebook room, Jean?
Yes, we've got some great questions coming in from the Facebook group. First, thanks everybody for sharing. I mean, this is an important topic. I switched the page out on myself there. And there goes my dogs. I apologize if that came through the mic. So we got a great question coming in from Pete. He's asking, how are schools supporting you guys during this time? Do you feel like you have the resources you need?
I'll say because my school is a little bit different for my kids, so I'll just kind of jump on that one real quick. They have definitely been very, very, they'll check in once a week, and they've indicated that they would reach out and they will be able to assist us if we needed anything, via telehealth or telemental health. So the only challenge with that, for us is if my kids have not been very much conditioned to work off of, a video, doing some type of tutorial or any type of instructor, interaction, then to do it now is just going to be, almost very difficult for them. So and I think that's kind of what they were saying too. They knew they weren't going to do it. So for my kids, just where they are on the spectrum, so I kind of want to make sure I say that correctly. Where my kids are on the spectrum, this is kind of what we knew would not work for them because they haven't been conditioned to work off of a tablet for one-on-one instruction anyway. But the school has said, well, we'll reach out to the parents and say, hey, is there anything we can help you with, as far as structuring your day, organizing your day, anything that we can do in that capacity. And so that's kind of been what we've seen from our standpoint. And it has, I think my wife actually did it once when she did have a session with them and talked about some things. But we've definitely realized that, if she's home with all 3 kids and, and I'm, doing, still working, it's kind of hard to implement a program for 2 kids with special needs and the 3-year-old that's home also. So it just kind of like, well, it's probably not going to work as much. And I think that's probably going to be some of the scenarios for other families out here too, where they may have some school involvement. However, if you have multiple kids or you have multiple obligations and multiple kids, that the instruction may not, or the intervention from the school may not be as effective, not because the intervention that they provide is ineffective, it's just the how to implement it in the midst of managing every other obligation they have.
I definitely agree with Eric on that. With the schools, my kids are, my son who has autism is in Hillsborough County public school system, and the teachers have been great. They have been texting and we're doing the video chats. Unfortunately, I'm not sure if they're truly getting the support that they need. And I think that's something that, unfortunately, none of us were prepared for this. So I'm not sure if there was training implemented for this type of scenario. But I think we're all kind of feeling burnt out at this point, teachers included. And it was something that they weren't prepared for. It was something that we weren't prepared for. My family has done telehealth before, and my son has ADHD. He cannot sit still in front of a computer screen for longer than 30 seconds if they are not playing Roblox. So it would just be pointless. My son has 25 hours of therapy per week in person before this happened. We would have 25 hours per week of therapy. To incorporate 25 hours a week in therapy virtually it's impossible for my family. I'm going to be honest, it's impossible. So we have not done it.
Yeah, we haven't had a whole lot as far as special services support, but I will say, I was really impressed. So we have laptops at home, but my husband and I are both teleworking, so those laptops are not available for the kids. So the district actually was able to give any kid that needed, or not give, loan, any kid that needed it, some sort of device, whether that be a Chromebook or a laptop or something, so that they could do the work. And our speech therapist has actually done an amazing job of she has this thing where the kids can read to her by video and listen to her reading, so it's a little more interactive. But as far as, the occupational therapy, how do you do that by telework? And they don't have the time to do that for all of the kids, because a lot of times those hours, like the 25 hours Marla talked about, are in conjunction with other children, and the teachers just don't have the kind of time to do that individually for kids. And I don't know, with this population especially, getting a group of kids to all cooperate via Zoom is really not the most feasible option. So they're doing their best. With my teenagers, we've actually had a very frustrating time, because I'll watch them do their homework, but they're not hitting the turn it in button, and then the teacher is giving them a 0. And I'm like, you can see that they've worked on this, just ping them and let them know that they haven't turned it in. But for the teachers, for some reason, that is a battle for them. Well, they should know to do it, or they should be doing it. So it's a lot of understanding. And then one challenge for us with teenagers is they've put out the guidance that whatever grade you got in quarter 3 is your quarter 4 grade. So how do you motivate a kid to do their homework when they're going to get the grade they got regardless? That's been challenging. And luckily I break out my Army Sergeant voice, and I'm like, you're going to do this, and I'll sit down and do it with them. But it does present some challenges for my teams.
Yeah, I know we just got one of you guys on, but all you guys are married. So what recommendation would you give us somebody who's a co-parent? How do they help each other out, feeding off each other, what like that? So what do you have recommendations for that?
Like to support our spouses?
Yeah, how do your spouse, together as a team? I know I hear that, but just give us a walkthrough. How do you guys coordinate being a team when it comes to this?
Well, I can speak for my family. With my husband and I, we were kind of taking turns. And this is before COVID anyway. When we go out in public, you either get my son who has autism and my daughter who can walk by herself and she's fine, so you have 2 kids and the other one has 1. And so we kind of tag team that way. And that's just something we've always done prior to this is, we kind of switch on and off. It's been really difficult, but gratefully I have my husband home. He is teleworking, but I work from home and he's working. And so that transition period for both of us kind of is a little gray, honestly, because I spend a lot of late nights working until 1 or 2 in the morning. And so it's definitely been difficult, but we're definitely trying to work together to make it positive for everybody.
Yeah, I have to give a lot of props to my husband. He's a recruiter right now, so he's had a little more downtime than normal. So we kind of balance our schedules. And so he's like, I have a call from this time to this time. Can you help if help is needed? And then I'll let him know what my schedule is. And so it's a lot of balancing. And then at night it's, do you need to go to the bedroom and take a break? And I'll take the kids, or vice versa.
Yeah, that's really, I would say that, and to try to keep this very short, but I believe that, you often hear times people will say, well, had kids and then relationship became more difficult. And I'm like, that's not really true. Kids just came along. It kind of exploited the weaknesses that you already had. I think that I think when it comes to having kids with special needs, it's kind of the same thing. Like if you weren't really great at communicating and working as a team, it really shows even more when you have kids with special needs. And so it does really call on us to really to communicate a lot better and to really figure out how are we going to support each other's own, their own, career, personal aspirations and dreams and goals. And so for me and my wife was very much, in her professional career, I was like, look, you know what, whatever we got to do, we'll make it happen. And so she, in her career, I didn't mind, I even said, look, I'll be work from home dad while you do what you need to do, because it's kind of what was working. And at that time with her job, it definitely, took care of all our benefits and the pay and everything like that. So we were fine with that, but we would have these talks, a lot, like what's going to work well for us. And so at the end of the day, that's the biggest thing is not so much what works for me or what works for you, it's what's going to work for us, and looking at it from a much larger perspective. And so at this point, I might go home and like, look, you know what, because I'm working primarily out and my wife is, primarily working from home, I might go home and say, hey, you know what, she probably didn't get to the laundry today. I'm not getting mad because the laundry's not done. I'm not getting mad because I walk in at, 8 o'clock at night. I'm seeing clients all day and there's dishes in the kitchen. I'm like, man, it must have been a rough day today. That's my mindset. Must have been a rough day today. Let me jump in so that way I can help out because I know that's, what's happening. I know the dynamics. And so it's just being more compassionate and understanding that with the circumstances we have, any day can just be an off day, and you're probably going to have more off days than on days. And so you don't assume that the person is just not being a team player. You make the assumption or the belief that, hey, you know what, they did the best they could today. She's knocked out and it's 8:30. Like, wow, all right, I'm not mad at her. I just know she had a rough day, so let me jump in and do what I can so that when she wakes up tomorrow, she has less to do. And so that's really the mindset. It's just always being aware that, we're still in the same team. It's just that every day, like as Maureen was saying, sometimes you just have to be very self-forgiving. And, we practice that enough and another person just kind of steps in and says, like, you know what, I can take over that piece. So, but a lot of communication and a lot of just kind of asking, hey, what can I do? How can I support you? And kind of taking it from there.
Maureen, anything to add? Oh, no, I'm sorry. You guys, man, I'm sorry, you all had this question. I know we're getting close to the end, coming to the end here, and I wanted to ask you guys, is there any kind of book or YouTube video, whatever you thought really helped you out when as far as, handling your children? So give a recommendation on that. I would really appreciate it.
Sure. I'll start that one. So 2 books that completely changed my life as the parent of a special needs kid is The Out of Sync Child. And The Out of Sync Child Has Fun. They're a companion series. And that book changed my parenting completely because it helped me understand. And the thing that, I've not taught my kids that they have a disability. I've taught them that they have a different ability. And so I tell them that they're a Mac in a world full of PCs, and sometimes the programs don't talk to each other effectively, and they have to keep trying. And that book really helped me understand that. And then my favorite book, my middle child would throw these epic tantrums that would last for like 5 hours and scream till you thought your ears were going to bleed and hit and kick and bite. And the book called The Explosive Child changed my cognitive perception of what's going on from she is such a horrible child or I'm such a terrible parent to this child has reached her max frustration point. She was expecting this. This is what she got. She doesn't have the tolerance for it. And this is how she's responding because she doesn't have the language to tell me I'm frustrated, And so those are 2 books that I highly recommend. And then for sensory issues, especially as an adult reading, is the book Too Loud, Too Bright, Too Fast, Too Tight. And it's about sensory processing disorder, but from an adult's perspective. And reading that book really opened my eyes to why my kids would have such a terrible time, like Marla talked about at Costco, and anytime I'd take them in public, why it was so overwhelming for them.
I'll jump in. I think the book that I've read that actually was told to me by a person that was working with one of my sons. She had read it, and she had a daughter with autism, and so she kind of shared it with me, and I was like, sure. So the name of that book was The Reason I Jump, and it's actually written by a 13-year-old nonverbal child. And I think he's from Japan, if I'm not mistaken. But in that, he's kind of giving his account, and so they use a speaking device to actually write it. And so it's gotten a lot of great reviews, but it really gives his account of what it's like to be a child with special needs. And so I think anybody who maybe, if you're a sibling of a person, you may be a parent, you may be a caregiver, in whatever capacity you are, I think it does, as Maureen said, it does shape the way you begin to look at those individuals and some of the behaviors that they display when you see that this kid actually explains why he's doing certain things and what he's actually thinking. And so I think it's very, very a great read, and I would highly recommend that one.
I don't have a specific book. I love what Maureen and Eric both mentioned, both the books that they mentioned. For me, I just wanted to kind of encourage everybody to reach out for support, activate your village, because that is kind of what's been getting me through, is being able to talk to friends. And, I have friends who have special needs children and say, you know what, today I'm done. I'm done. And being able to just let loose and speak what you need to say, and, just allowing yourself to vent. I think is just a huge, plus for us right now as special needs parents. It's been pretty difficult for us, especially having multiple doctor's appointments and things like that. And now those have been kind of eliminated. And just knowing that we're not getting everything that we need for our children at this time.
I think I would add to that too, a great point of reaching out to your village, and also asking our villages to understand that if we're not reaching out, we're probably exhausted. Don't be offended if we're not attending your online virtual parties or wine and wines. We may not have it anymore. One of my favorite T-shirts is, I'm a parent of a child on the spectrum. I used up all my patience on them. I don't have any left for you. We're exhausted. And so don't think that we don't care about you or we don't love you, but understand that we're doing the best we can to care for those in our immediate care first. And when we have more, we will reach out with more. But check on us, make sure we're okay. We may not be reaching out, but we might need help.
Yeah.
Jen, you said there's some questions on the Facebook.
Yep, we've got some final questions here on the Facebook. First, shout out, a few people are just throwing out their support to you guys, saying thanks so much for being here today and sharing, and very much thank you. And they're saying yes, I feel the same way. So really that validation, as the counselors here in the group know, validation is number one, right? So we do have one question that I don't really have an answer to, but it's only fair to share it. To say, why is most research done about autism for those in the high functioning autism and not done with those that have moderate to severe autism? I think that's a great question. I don't know, but I'm going to research that, and maybe we'll touch up on that on another podcast. Say, hey, follow up from a question, because that's a really good question.
That question that came from Ulysses. He's another retired veteran. He's a LMHC, and he got a PhD. So thank you, Ulysses, for the question. Maybe that's something we can do later on. So, I want to get ready to wrap this up, because, I know, and I really appreciate you guys taking the time out. And it sounds like you guys' day is hectic. And given it really is. I'm telling you, I'm exhausted already. And you still got to go take care of the kids and stuff. And so thank you again. Maybe, maybe we can have another part 2, part 3 of this, and help the people out here. We get a good feedback from people on this podcast. But I'll give you guys one more last chance to say something. After that, Gene and I will wrap it up at the end and just kind of talk about what we've learned. So I'm giving you guys a chance to say one more bid, and then we'll call it a day. Start with Marla.
I just want to say thank you guys so much for having us on, and thank you guys all out there for the support that you're giving us. It does mean a lot to us, and we're grateful. And like Maureen said, just please allow us the time and the space to adjust to this new life. And we need to do the same for ourselves. If you're a parent with a child who has special needs, give yourself some grace. You deserve it.
Eric?
Absolutely. Did I turn my mic on?
We can hear you.
I can hear you.
Okay, good. So the one thing I just say is, what really shaped my mind, I encourage everybody, you know, if you're a believer, John 9. John 9, 1-3, it does change your perspective. And I think at the end of the day, it does say that, you know, for those of us who have these kids with special needs, this is also something that we can, you know, something that is not necessarily our fault. We didn't do this, we didn't cause it. And that really helped shape my mind. And something I really speak about with other families is, you know, even though times may be tough, this is an opportunity for us to try to figure out ways and be very creative in our ways to turn lemons into lemonade. So that's the one biggest thing that I challenge, and do not try to fit into the norm of what everybody else is doing, but create your own normal. And that's the biggest thing is we don't have to fit in with the rest of the world. We can just fit in with, you know, what works for us. And so I like that approach to just being an autism parent and releasing ourselves from being, you know, judged or feeling like we are compared to everybody else.
Yeah,
Maureen?
you're both great. It's hard to add. Those were both great things. I think the one thing I would reiterate is please share those CDC guidelines about mask wearing, and please, you know, have a forgiving mindset, have an understanding mindset. Thank you so much for taking the time to listen to our stories. Sometimes, you know, we feel a bit like unsung heroes because we're just surviving day to day, and sometimes we don't always have the opportunity to share the challenges that we're facing. So thank you.
Thank you guys very much. We're a little bit over our time, but I really appreciate you guys. And now it's time for me and Gene to have our last chat, and hopefully I see you guys around the corner. All right, you can sit here and listen, wait for us finish up, and we'll see you on next time. Thank you very much. So Gene, you know, this has really been a very informative an hour of listening to these parents and counselors talk about the effect of having special needs kids during COVID-19. Do you have any kind of takeaways from this?
Great sharing by the parents. I mean, great conversations we're having on Facebook. I really think, again, you know, like some of the other topics we touch on in some of these podcasts, this is a strong topic. You know, like some of the moms have said, the educators, shout out to the educators as well. They're just as frustrated. They don't know, there was no training. Nobody was prepared for this, you know, and so now we're looking at everybody has to transition without any experience, without any, and everybody has a different opinion and a different idea, you know, and every child, every human is different. So yeah, I mean, I think this touches on to the light on a lot of internal issues that people are having, and on top of that, we have to isolate with COVID-19. So already people, you know, like she said, you know, I'm sorry we don't have time for your wine parties or your Facebook parties. Excellent point. On the best day, they're exhausted. Now we have to, you know, stay sheltered, shelter in place, you know, all of this at the same time. It's, you know, and I love what they said about, you know what, we have to reset our priorities. And if my priority is keeping my kid happy, and not breaking things or potentially harming themselves, you know, breaking windows, breaking TVs, that could have just devastating effects. You know, it's harmful. And unsafe, you know, no dish on the parents there, like but it's the frustration at the whole level. So yeah, you have to pick your priorities, and priority one is keeping you, your family, and your children safe.
Yeah, one of the things I thought was interesting takeaway as well is that they all looked at themselves as to blame. I mean, you know,
Yes.
That to me is very interesting. Doesn't matter if it's civilian, military, whatever they are, like, what did I do? You know,
always, what a great parent, right? To say, oh, what can I do differently? We always focus on locus of control, right? What do you have control over? What do you don't? And to take it all on yourself like that, like step back, girl, wash your face, right? Give yourself some grace. It's okay. If the dishes are in the sink, ain't nobody coming over. It's COVID-19. Nobody's seeing that. Give yourself some grace. Here's the permission to all of you parents out there. Give yourself some grace.
Yeah, also I had a meeting today earlier with a faith group, and I asked about special needs, and I found out that is a very limited resource even in our community. So that's something else that I thought was kind of interesting, is that the military, and they don't like hearing it, but you know, they mentioned about the military has lacks of flexibility, you got a long waiting line, all this other kind of stuff. So this is really a time where the community has to step up and take care of some of these veterans families or military families who have these special need kids. So I thought that was a real interesting takeaway as well.
Yeah, I mean, you're up there in the on the west coast of Florida. I'm here on the east coast. I'm next to Patrick Air Force Base, and one of my takeaways from this podcast is maybe to connect with anybody I can find over. So if anybody at Patrick Air Force Base is watching, who can I connect with? You know, I am a provider in the community. And we as providers do want to help our community. So what can I do for my brothers and sisters who are still active duty, right here locally, even if right here at Patrick Air Force Base or where you're at? Or any providers that are near an installation for the active duty, as well as the veterans in the community.
So again, everybody out there who's still on the Facebook watching us, please share if you can. I got a message from somebody saying they Facebook wouldn't allow them to share it. I don't know what's going there, but like it, share it, so that we know that we're satisfying what you're doing, and hopefully we have some more podcasts similar to what we're talking here. Special needs that a certain population. So in one more time before I leave, Jean, any last takeaways or thoughts?
No, I think it's all been said. I think we got a great topic today, great information. Check out those books. I'm familiar with a few of them. They're even on audio. So if you don't have time to sit and read, Audible books, is books on tape for us old people, right?
That's right.
It can make a difference.
Okay, guys, this is Veteran Council Veterans and our podcast, Veteran Suicide Local Solution. Thank you for episode 6 about the special needs children for military and families. Look out for our next episode on Monday at 6:30, and we're trying to actually do a new episode going to be on faith-based and veteran suicide. But until then, thanks for tuning in. This is Tony Williams from Veterans Council Veterans. See you later.